I see more people joining. This is awesome, you all. So just to make sure you're in the right spot, you're here with Dr. Angela Glymph and Jaansi Patel, and we are going to be talking about understanding all the feels. This is a CEO coffee chat on emotional awareness. And I am so happy to be doing
Yeah,
this
I'm so
with
excited.
the lovely
So maybe
Jaansi
to start
Patel.
off with some quick introductions. My name is Jaansi. My pronouns are she, her. I'm from New Jersey, but I currently go to boarding school in New Hampshire, which is very exciting. I am a junior in high school, and I'm also the host of Learn On podcast, and we previously collaborated with Dr. Glymph. And I am interested in mental health because I feel like, especially through
Yes.
the pandemic, which was a particularly, I want to say, tumultuous time for young people, I experienced firsthand how different aspects of our environment can really impact mental health and how important it is to be aware of that. And so I'm just really passionate about kind of creating safe spaces for people to more open discussions about that.
Awesome. Awesome. And hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Angela Glymph. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the CEO of Pure Health Exchange. I get to work with young people like John C. In providing health education and health resources to young people all across the country. And very excited that I get to do this part of my job, which is to share information and just really spread knowledge around different health topics. And mental health is really important to me. First and foremost, I don't know if everyone knows this about me, but my doctorate is actually in psychology. So psychology, mental health, emotional well-being, all of those things I've trained for a very long time. So that is sort of my background. But I think on a personal note, I think why this conversation is so important to me and to have it with a young person, because it wasn't something that was talked about when I was a young person, John C. When I was in high school, like, I mean, we had health, but we didn't talk about mental health. And so I am just so happy and glad that, young people like yourselves are really getting the knowledge around mental health and being able to have very open conversations about it. And I think the other importance that I have that I place around mental health and conversations like this, it also helps to destigmatize mental health as well. And so, yeah, that's what brings me joy about this subject
Yeah, me
matter, and
too.
I'm just so
So I
excited to
guess the
dig in
big
with
topic
you.
of discussion for today is thinking about our emotions. And I feel like, especially now, as you said, as there's more awareness of mental health, and even I want to say, like in the corporate world, people often use the word like emotional awareness or emotional regulation, even emotional intelligence. So maybe could you break down for us what these different terms mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And before I go into those specific terms, I'm going to nerd out a little bit and showcase my doctorate. But basically, when we're talking about like psychology or social cognition, one of the things that is really important for the audience to understand is like all that we do. There's sort of like three major components of like our psyche. So, and we call them in psychology like the ABCs, right? So there's affect, which is also sort of synonymous with like the emotions, your feelings. There's your B, the behavior, and then there's C, cognition, right? And so all of those three components work together, right? They're always working together. And sometimes one might dominate the other or one might influence the other more, but they're always working in tandem. So when we talk about emotions or affect, the A of the ABCs, in some spaces, people put a negative connotation on emotions, like keep your emotions to the side. Well, guess what? Newsflash, it's impossible. You can't. So what we have to realize is that those things are always interacting. We want them to be in balance, right? Because if one takes over the other, you might behave in a way that you really weren't expecting to behave or didn't want to behave. You might perceive things, that's the cognition part, based on your emotions in a way that actually wasn't reality, right? And because of those perceptions or your behavior, it actually can affect how you feel about things, right? So you always want to make sure those things are in balance. So when we're talking about the affect or the emotions, just get into the conversation, knowing that they're always there, right? So we just need to embrace them. And part of being aware is this concept emotional intelligence. So that has been a growing concept. You might hear it in some spaces. They refer to it as EQ, like your IQ, like your how much intelligence you have. Well, it's also about how much emotional intelligence you have. And really all that is your ability to recognize or perceive, to express, and to regulate your emotions. And how well you're able to do that is what's referred to as your emotional intelligence, right? And so the regulate part of that is just your ability to just control or keep your emotions in check. So they are not, again, being overpowering those other parts of your psyche, that behavior part or that cognitive part. And so the regulations, there's different techniques and different skills, again, that you can learn. So just like any forms of intelligence or skills, you actually can learn how to regulate your emotions, which is really powerful to know. And I'm glad that those things are being, shared and being talked about. And I know we're going to get into some of those strategies as well. But that's really what it's about. So emotional intelligence, just being aware of it, your ability to perceive it, your ability to manage your emotions, and not only in yourself, but also in other people. So that's also the social part of emotional intelligence. So being able to recognize those things in yourself, but also being able to recognize those in
Yeah, thank
others
you for
around you
sharing
is
that,
what we
especially
what
the
we mean
little
by emotional
nerd out moment.
intelligence.
I really appreciate as a fellow enjoyer of psychology. And I think it's incredibly important that we're having these discussions now. As you said,
Yes,
it's basically impossible to isolate emotions from the rest of our everyday lives. And I'm actually doing some very exciting research right now, looking at different ways
that's right.
to improve mental function. And like one of the patterns that I've seen consistently is that if you're not in a calm state of mind, or if you're not experiencing positive emotions, that's going to have a negative impact on other things like your executive function, and ultimately change the way that we interact with other people and our productivity levels. So it's definitely important to be able to look at those things and openly
That's
address
right.
them rather than suppressing them and having more of a negative reaction in the future. And I think this is especially important in young people, in high
Mhm.
schoolers, because as I've experienced myself, it's definitely very hard to have to juggle, really like high level academic and extracurricular commitments, having to support your family, having to support people, taking on many different roles in your life, and also having to deal with complex emotions as you're growing into yourself and your identity is developing. And so I think thinking about emotions as a way to improve our lives when we're able to better understand and regulate them rather than something that we have to work against is definitely a really important change that has helped me personally.
That's right. Yeah. And it's so critical for high schoolers, young people to really be aware of, like these concepts around emotional intelligence or emotional regulation. Because as you mentioned, this is a part in your life where, well, first of all, you're going to experience incredible highs and lows. So there are going to be lots of moments for you to experience lots of different emotions, positive, negative, in between, right? So this is the time of your life where that is going to be true for you. It's also a time of your life where everything that you do is incredibly social. Like everything, as you mentioned, right? Your interpersonal relationships are very strong, whether they be with your family, whether they be with your friends, whether they be with your teachers, so on and so forth. So your interpersonal life is so important and so critical. So again, emotions and your ability to control and regulate your emotions really plays a part in how well your interpersonal relationships are, because again, it's about recognizing my own emotions, but it's also recognizing those of others that are around you. So it's very critical in this time of your life that we understand how important it is to just be
Absolutely.
aware, right? To
And
be
also going
aware
back
of
to the
emotions.
professional setting, since collaboration is so important in spaces where like you're working on projects together as a large team, being able to, I think, regulate your emotions first and be able to understand how you are feeling is critical in then being able to understand other people's emotions, like you said. And when it comes to things like having to communicate boundaries, taking space, needing to like analyze someone else's emotions before deciding how to approach maybe a difficult conversation or thinking about ways to improve as a collective, I think being able to read people's emotions and having that skill of like emotional intelligence, thinking about ways that we can kind of echo and communicate other people's feelings and affirm how someone is feeling in the moment is incredibly important as we're having really important conversations like that. And so I think as we
Absolutely.
are talking about emotions and how important they are, I think having to or being able to create a positive relationship with them is also especially important. And again, as you said, being able to recognize someone else's emotions before we're able to do that, recognizing your own is just as important. So maybe do you have any major takeaways or like steps that we could follow in order to create a more actively positive relationship with the emotions that we're experiencing, whether those are positive or negative?
Yeah, I think the first step for me was what I had to grow into learning is that it's okay to be emotional. I think there's a negative connotation placed around, this term emotions or being emotional. Like first of all, it's ubiquitous. It's around you. It's with you every day. Like I just when I opened up and I trained in psychology, so I still have to remind myself like that is just a human gift that I will call it a gift, a human gift that we have bestowed on us. And so I think really shaking any kind of negative connotations or stigma around being emotional is the first step that I think is very powerful. And then the second thing, on the awareness piece, again, emotional regulation is a skill. So, like any other skills, they can be honed, they can be taught, and it's an ongoing thing. And so, you don't necessarily have to feel like you got to come out of the gate and get it right the first time, right? This is practice over time. So, once we get, rid of the stigma around like, oh, I'm too emotional, like, no such thing. Like, that's okay. That's a perfect human thing. However, there is, I do believe, a need and accountability then to say, okay, so I have these emotions. Sometimes they're going to serve me great. Sometimes they might not, or they might not serve the people around me in the best way. So let me figure out some skills and strategy to regulate them, right? To be aware of them and to regulate them. And so some of the things that I think, again, powerful self-awareness is just understanding how you're feeling and saying it. So one of the things that I do, especially in hard moments, it's just to name it. Like, I'm angry. Like just to say it, that's a powerful strategy to bring the awareness of self to the forefront, right? And to really name that emotion. So say it, or some people, if you don't want to do it verbally, write it down, but just name it, right? Like name what we're talking about. That's the first thing. So understand how you're feeling, declare it. Then once you declare it, I think then there's another sort of piece of that is unpacking it, right? Like just trying to understand it. Like what is it? What is it? What is the thing that really has you upset or has you sad or is giving you great joy, right? Like that's also a part of it. And writing that down, journaling, just being with yourself or doing self-talk, it's just staying with yourself. So before you invite other people into that intimate emotional space, do your self awareness work. So that would be the first step that I would say. Then once you sort of unpack, like, this is the emotion that I'm experiencing right now, then it's time to move in sort of that second step of like regulating that. So what are we going to do with that, right? What are we going to do, or what do we need to do with that emotion? And so sometimes for some people it's deep breathing or deep meditation, like just sort of really focusing or isolating that thing, putting it in its proper container. For others, it's exercising, right? Like I like to take long walks, right? And so exercising kind of helps me release. And again, it's still, a way it's serving both physical, right, and my emotional state. So I like to do that. I'm kind of checking both boxes with that practice. For others, it might be other, activities that bring you joy or bring you comfort. It might be watching TV. Sometimes I do that too. I like to watch trash TV just to get my mind off of the thing, right? And so it's just a matter of just coming to normal state. That's what you're doing, right? You're just kind of regulating yourself to getting yourself back to sort of that even state where now I feel like if I got to think about something, my emotions aren't taking over. Or if I need to do something, right, then my emotions are not going to block me or make me behave in a way that I wouldn't want to behave, right? So it's just bringing yourself back to normal state. And then sometimes you might want to take another step, which is to express. So now you're becoming social. So I've done my inner work, I've done my self-awareness work, I've done my regulation work, and now maybe I need to or I want to invite others into this experience, meaning I may need to express it. Maybe there's a person that made you feel a certain way or that had something to do with that emotion that you experienced. And maybe there's a conversation, right, that you may want to have with that person. Maybe I didn't do a great job of regulating. Like I tried all my strategies and I can't get back, right? I'm having a tough time getting back to that middle state. And so maybe the action for you is to invite a mental health professional or someone that you can help talk through this, or they can offer up, right, different regulation strategies to support you in getting back to that middle state, that home plate, as I call it, right? And so that's what those are sort of my strategies. Start with self, get myself back to home base, and then I invite others if I need or if I want
Yeah,
to.
thank you so
So
much for
that's
sharing
that's
that.
sort of the
That makes
schema
a
that
lot
I
of
would
sense.
use.
And I guess up until now, I hadn't explicitly named the steps, but now that I think about it, as I've also learned to practice my own emotional regulation and figure out the things that work for me, I've definitely been following the same framework of steps somewhat on my own. Like for me personally, I have a good set of comfort shows that I always return to, like Stranger Things and Grey's Anatomy are one of them.
Yeah.
And I love like going for walks, especially right
Okay.
now. It's like really cold outside in New England, so it can be refreshing to just step away from your work. But yeah, I especially like how you
Yeah.
outlined that we're like if we're experiencing positive emotions, being able to kind of channel them to improve the way that we're able to work or bring new ideas to the table. And if we're experiencing negative emotions, also learning to regulate them, but not being completely blocked, despite having to deal with something challenging that's going on. And I think that's especially important, again, considering how embedded our emotions are with other parts of our life, and especially being able to name it and
Yeah.
understand how we are feeling first before reaching out to other people just helps you to kind of take control and have more autonomy in how you're feeling and how you choose to express it, I think.
Yes, and again, this is practice. So I'm definitely not perfect. Sometimes I reach out to others before I'm ready to, before I really unpack or name for myself like how I'm feeling. And I don't know, John, if you've ever experienced this, but sometimes if I prematurely do that, and then the other person is who wants to support me, and they're like, "How can I support you?" And I'm like, "I don't know," and I don't know because I haven't done that first step of really like processing and naming what is it that you're experiencing, and perhaps doing a little bit of work of like why, like what, unpacking that a little bit before you invite others in. So that has been something, that framework has definitely worked for me. So it's tried and true for me, but I do think it's a part of that, like that EQ or that emotional intelligence, right? Like you can, like, some people think, oh, there, you can't be logical or you can't think through when you're emotional, and that's not true. So don't fall into that hype, right? That is not true. Definitely emotions, I think it's because emotions you do experience sort of like a physiological deep response, especially some of those extreme emotions where it may seem impossible, right, for you to do that work. But there are just small bites in anything that you can take. And like I said, I think for me, it's like I'm not ready to invite anyone else in this experience. So I just kind of need to do that self work first, and then
Absolutely. And I'm
I
so
can
glad that you
invite
named
others
the physiological
into that
response,
space.
because something that I've noticed in both myself and others is, especially when an emotion is kind of building up to an overwhelming level, but you haven't given yourself that time to pause and think, to go through that first step of understanding how you're feeling, especially if it's like because you're stressed out from a certain scenario and you just haven't had time to take a break and really do some kind of introspective reflection. You start to feel it in other parts of your body first. And then it's especially
Hmm.
difficult to communicate to someone else what you need when you're not sure with yourself. So it's so powerful to just be able to be in tune with your body like that and realize when you need to stop and take a break and do some reflecting for yourself before, you know, the emotion turns into something negative, so that we are really able to exercise that emotional intelligence and have that proper balance with ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also want to make clear to the audience too, there are going to be extenuating circumstances like something traumatic, for example, where there might be a breakdown in that framework. So I do want to make clear, right, this framework I'm really talking about, and when I say normal, I mean like, day to day sort of normal kinds of things or activities that come your way where this framework can work. But I also want to make clear, and I'm very open to sharing, like there have been experiences in my life were very traumatizing, and I just needed help. Like I couldn't, the sort of emotions were so overpowering. And in those cases, right, like I will give myself a credit for my own EQ, but I understood that like this is really overwhelming. And so I went straight to the behavior of reaching out to a mental health professional that could support me in that, because I knew that that my breakdown, that framework wasn't going to work for me in that particular moment. So I do want to also make clear that I do recognize there are extenuating circumstances that could be so overwhelming that it may mean that you have to sort of reach for that support first, and then that support in my experiences then help me get back right to the regulation and to work me through
Absolutely,
that
completely
experience. So
agree.
I just also wanted
And
to offer
just, I
that up
guess,
too.
another point for the audience that comes to mind is, I feel like as we are talking about the development of the corporate world and just the future of where technology is going, something that consistently keeps coming up is artificial intelligence, right? And the fear, or even just the idea of technology being able to replace us in our
Mhm.
jobs. But something that technology will never be able to replicate, at least for the near future, is the emotions that we are able to experience. And emotions are a beautiful thing, whether they're positive or negative or in between.
Right.
It's what makes us human and it's what connects us to each other. And so being able to follow this framework and harnessing our emotions into something good and being in tune with it rather than seeing it as something to suppress is an incredibly powerful tool that can improve us all for the better and just deepen our relationships, whether that's personal or corporate or something
Right.
else.
That's right. I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because like I said, when I at the front end, having emotions is so human, and it's a gift. It's a gift. It helps bind us, it helps connect us, it protects us in situations that are unsafe, right? So it is a human quality that, I've been, as I'm getting older, embracing. Like this is just a part of we can't separate it. So I don't even like to use that language like check your emotions. Like check meaning
Right.
regulate, but you can't put them to the side. They're in you. They're a part of you. And so how do we sort of manage them appropriately? I think is the critical work. And like I said, young people just getting these terms and having this language now sets you up so much better for success than the setup that I got, because we weren't even talking about mental health, let alone really unpacking like the importance of regulating emotions. So I would say, Jaansi, you and your peers and your generation is so far ahead of the game because there's still folks my age, adults, that can't do this. I mean, I'm here to tell you, they're struggling, or have never encountered right these terms, and so the fact that I get to have these conversations with young people just really warms my heart and just lets me know that the world is going to be a better place if we really
Yeah, just
invest
like you
in
said,
this
emotional
type of
regulation, along
education and
with
these skills.
many other aspects of our daily lives, is something that we need to practice and something that we get better with over time. And it's also the incredible work of you and everyone at Peer Health Exchange that allows youth to get resources and get support and be able to talk about things like this that weren't there before. So thank you so much for everything that you do.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. It's definitely
Yeah.
my pleasure and my privilege to do that work. Well, Johnson, do you have any like closing thoughts or one last
Yeah, no,
question? And
I think this
because
was
I
all
know we're
great,
getting close to
and I
time, and
guess
then
just a
we can
final
wrap it up.
reminder to our audience that emotions are something that shouldn't be suppressed. It's something that we should work to better understand about ourselves. And when you're able to work, I guess, with your emotions instead of against them, it's just so much more empowering, and that change in mindset really changes a lot of other things about your life. So, yeah.
Well said, well said. Well, the only concluding remark that I will have, well, first of all, I'll just want to thank you and thank you for the work that you do with and for Peer Health Exchange, and then outside of Peer, just bringing issues like this around health to the forefront
Thank
of
you.
to your peers. I really appreciate that and really appreciate your leadership and your voice in this work. And then lastly, for those of you who joined us today, I just want to send a heartfelt thank you for being here with us and spending this time listening and learning more about emotional intelligence and emotional regulation. And I will just end with this little plug. That Peer Health Exchange, we are going to be celebrating this year in some upcoming fundraising events. I'm going to read the title because I don't want my team to be mad at me, but the name of our event series is Youth First. Youth First, paving the way for a healthier generation. And so we are going to be hosting events in Boston, Massachusetts on April 3rd. And then we have another one in New York City on May the 8th. Both of those events will include silent and live auctions. Contributions, of course, support health education initiatives impacting young people like Jaansi with resources and opportunities. So if you are in Boston or you're in New York, please join us. Please support us. Buy those tickets. Bring folks that you know who care about health education and want to see young people get the health resources that they need and that they want. Sponsorships enhance the event's impact. And again, you can buy tickets or learn more about these events by visiting our website at www.peerhealthexchange.org. So hope to see you all there.
Of course,
Thanks
and
for
thank you so much
joining,
for having
and
me.
thank you so much, Jaansi, for the incredible work you do.